that many days.
True.
So I'll take this few heat for a few days, and then the rain comes back and I cool off.
If you say that, it might not come back.
Hey, we're in the Northwest. It'll come back.
It'll come back.
Trust me.
Very bipolar. It is very bipolar.
Yeah, usually we have rain right up to the 4th of July. A lot of times it rains on the 4th and then we get summer. So this is about what, a week and a half early or something?
Yeah. And it's funny because it was raining pretty hard for like graduation season for all the high schoolers. And now it gets sunny. Like
Yep.
terrible timing. Okay. Well, I think it might be good to get started just with some introductions. Well, hello, thank you all for coming and being in attendance for this event. It's been a very hot past couple of days. I know we're all feeling a mix of emotions, but we're all still grateful, myself, the youth team, and all the youth that are present here today for all of your faces being present here, not only to show support, but also to recognize that the issue that will be presented today is a very important one that requires conversation and learning from each other. And that's what the purpose of this event and past events we've held are for. And it's all about taking that next step towards finding solutions that we can directly apply to our communities and ultimately gain new perspectives and insight that we can take and either use ourselves or pass along to someone else. So I want to just first start off by having the youth introduce themselves by just saying their name, grade, school, and one thing they're looking forward to this summer. So if one of the youth could get us rolling, we can get started. Go ahead, Khalid.
Hello, my name is Khalid Muhammad, and I go to Camp Meridian High School. And one thing I'm looking for the summer is nothing really. I'm just looking forward for next year because I'm doing Running Star next year.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Ismail Alam. I'm in 8th grade. I go to Mill Creek Middle School, and one thing I'm looking forward to summer is not the heat, but the memories, because there's gonna be no school. Oh, and not waking up so early.
Awesome.
All right, hello. My name is Maritza Martinez. I went to Kentwood High School, but I am going off to college this year, still undecided. But the thing I'm looking forward to doing this summer is going out on hikes and like exploring new trails and all that fun stuff.
Awesome.
Hello, my name is Amal. I'm a 9th grader at Camp Meridian High School. And something I'm excited for this summer is going swimming because I used to swim a lot last summer.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Hamdi Apti. I just finished being a freshman at Thomas Jefferson High School, and what I'm looking forward to this summer is not waking up early and just having more time to do things that I wouldn't be able to do when we had school.
Hi, my name is Joy Apti. I was an 8th grader at Kyla Middle School, going to high school, and I'm looking forward to sleeping in every day.
I want to take a moment to point out one of our students put something in the chat because their mic isn't working. Sol, she's in 7th grade, going to Meeker Middle School. Something she's excited about in the summer. It's going to lakes and beaches with her cousins. Thank you for putting that in the chat, Sol.
Another thing I want to say real quick is that the first time you run into trying to get in office, that's when it's not this campaign. I know that from my own experience, and that's when
You have another youth that I know we didn't. I know there's still a couple left.
and this is a tough race, running countywide for the four.
Okay. Yes, Hamdi. Rawan, are you there?
Yeah,
Can you introduce yourself to the group?
yeah, my name is Uma. I'm ninth grade, 10th reading. I mean, like, I'm 10th grade, 10th reading.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
one thing I'm looking forward to this summer is working. That's it.
Work. Awesome. Okay. Are there any other youth that want to introduce themselves or feeling shy today?
Hello, my name is Mohammed Bar and I'm in Pacific Middle School. I'm going to high school.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Thank you. Okay.
Hello, I'm Saifuddin. I just recently graduated from Kentwood High School and I'm looking forward to working.
Thank you, Saifuddin. Thank you. Okay. Lukman, are you there, man?
Huh?
Not you, Ruman, Lukman.
Oh, sorry.
Similar names, I know.
Did you call me?
Yeah,
Me?
yeah.
Oh. My name is Lokman Muhammad, and I'm 7th grade. I'm going to 8th grade in Mill Creek. I go to Mill Creek Middle School.
You sound like a robot, man. That's pretty cool. Okay. Awesome. Okay, well, for those of you that just joined in, thank you guys for hopping on. I see some familiar faces and some faces that are new, but we thank you guys for hopping on, being a part of this community and being along for the journey. Over the past several weeks, our youth have engaged in discussion and work related to gun control and gun violence, specifically highlighting, bringing awareness to gun violence as a public health issue, which is great because it aligns exactly with what the Alliance for Gun Responsibility is all about. Through their experiences, either personally or watching the unfortunate instances play out in the media community, it was necessary for the Youth Policy Council to address the negative personal feelings that arise or arose, such as confusion, frustration, defeat. But often these feelings are representative of the many people that make up their community. No matter the range of emotions felt, it's evident that we would all like to prevent or eliminate gun violence forever being a factor to consider in our communities. And there are multiple ways to tackle this challenge, but ultimately discussions and work being done by this Youth Policy Council are with the intention of finding real solutions that can have a direct positive influence on the communities affected the most. We are grateful to have connected with the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, an amazing organization whose aim is to end gun violence. This has piqued the interest of the youth whose work shared similar intentions, and they are happy to have the Alliance here as a means for them and others to further educate themselves as they continue their great work as young leaders. So with that being said, I want to give the ball over to the amazing people at the Alliance. to introduce themselves. And yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Yusuf. I really appreciate you inviting us here, and to all the rest of the Living Well Kent youth for inviting us to come present this evening. My name is Chelsea. I am the Office and Administrative Specialist at the Alliance for Gun Responsibility. For this presentation, I can tell you I'm probably the least qualified, but I do help oversee all the operations for the organization, and just really excited to be in this space and to have my esteemed colleagues here to help present some of this information to you all. I'm going to pass the mic over to Sam and Tremaine. I'll let them introduce themselves, but just a little bit about kind of who they are. Sam is a fellow with our organization. We have been very lucky to have her for almost the entire year, for almost a year now, I guess, and are going to be really sad to see her go. She has helped immensely in putting together this particular program for you all this evening, and I'm really, really excited for her to present for you. And then also Tremaine, who is our newest member to the team. He is our Education and Engagement Director, and I'm really excited to have him also be able to present to you all this evening as well. I am going to go ahead and share my screen and put up the slideshow for you all. So give me just 1 second here. And then Tremaine and Sam, when you guys are ready, we can just tell me to move slides and we'll get going.
Yeah, so welcome to our presentation, Preventing Gun Violence in Your Community. We're so grateful to be here. My name is Samantha Eden. You can call me Sam. I'm an Advocacy and Engagement Coordinator Fellow at the Alliance. And yeah, Tremaine, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, as you said, I am the new Education and Engagement Director. Still very new, so much that I'm still on the East Coast. So hello from the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth. So it's the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I'm also excited to be here. I think this is one of my first big presentations with Sam, who we are so very lucky to have. So I'm very happy to be here and share this presentation with you all. Yeah.
All right, so just a little bit of background on who we are. So we're in an organization called the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, and we're dedicated to ending the gun violence epidemic and promoting a culture of gun ownership that balances both rights and responsibility. So we work with experts, elected officials, survivors, and a variety of communities to find solutions to the gun violence crisis. So we work to get gun violence prevention champions elected to office. We create policy and promote community education to reduce gun violence. I think maybe we skipped a slide there.
Thanks, we did. There it is. All right, so some quick numbers when it comes to gun violence, right? We've got Americans are 25 times more likely to be killed in gun homicide than others in high income countries. And American adolescents and young adults aged 15 to 24 are 23 times more likely to be killed with guns. And the majority of gun deaths are suicides. And we're gonna go into that a little bit more as we continue this conversation of gun violence as a public health crisis. But having access to a gun, right, triples the suicide risk. And the majority of suicides involve a gun. And while the most talked about, right, is mass shootings, they only account for 1% of all deaths each year. So these are kind of a quick run through of numbers, right? But when you also look at these numbers and you look at them in comparison to other, countries, it's sometimes hard to look at, but it's important to look at those facts and sometimes to use them right in a way that we can change this, to look at those numbers and know that we can change these numbers together. But I will stop there and pass it over so I don't slide into Sam's territory next.
All right, so we want to think about gun violence as a public health crisis. So thinking about two significant public health challenges that our country has dealt with, that say tobacco usage and drunk driving. These public health issues have been greatly reduced through intervention, through research, through education and policy. So rather than making alcohol or tobacco use or even driving illegal, the United States used a public health approach to pass policies and educate communities to combat these crises. So that same approach is very successful with reducing gun violence. So the idea is that the less guns there are in a home, the more safely the guns are stored. If there are guns in the home, the more people know about extreme risk protection orders. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And the more sensible gun laws that there are, the more lives will be saved. So with these public interventions, people will be safe from hurting themselves or others with a weapon, or be safer from being the victim of gun violence themselves. We can go to the next slide.
All right, that's me. So we talk about, right, gun violence and also prevention. So prevention at the federal and the state levels are different, right? In gun violence prevention, or GVP, policy has been notoriously difficult to implement at the federal level. And while there have been some successes, such as federal background checks, most GVP action is taken at the state level. But some recent actions at the federal level look like the Model Extreme Risk Protection Orders, or ERPO, legislation, but also annual firearms tracking, investment in community-based violent intervention programs, right? And also with the new administration, they have also recently talked about their strategies and a five-part strategy of how they're going to move forward to address gun violence and how it affects communities, right? In all communities, in the different ways that we know that communities of color, excuse me, right, are also impacted very differently when it comes to gun violence, and really trying to put resources there in different ways so that they can continue to address this issue. But outside of the federal level, right, we also look at action that is at the state level. And right, those extreme risk protection orders that are happening in states are helpful, or as we red flag laws right here in the state of Virginia, we call them red flag laws, that just this past year, well, last year, days are still hard in the pandemic. Last year, we just passed some of our own red flag laws, but also prohibiting armed intimidation by limiting open carry. I think that's right, a very important one that we've all now seen what that has looked like in our country, unfortunately, at our nation's capital, but also at some state capitals, and how people use their firearms to intimidate. And to not only intimidate, right, those elected officials to do their jobs, but also for those who might want to also protest and advocate for their rights, but also in elections. And it's not okay to intimidate others who are also wanting to be a part of their civic duties. And so it's really important to have these in place. But some other things that are happening at state levels are high capacity magazine restrictions, and assault weapons bans, examples such as California, but also here again in the state of Virginia, we do have assault weapon bans. I'll pass it back over to you, Sam.
All right, so now we're going to talk a bit more specifically about certain policies. So a great accomplishment to reduce gun violence that we have in Washington State is ERPOs, or extreme risk protection orders, also known as red flag laws. So we have this in Washington. It was passed in 2016 with Initiative 1491. And now, as a few months ago, you may have heard the Biden administration announced that legislation is going to be modeled for states. So extreme risk protection orders, ERPOs, or red flag laws, empower families and law enforcement to prevent gun tragedies by restricting access to guns for individuals who are at a heightened risk of hurting themselves or hurting others. So a family member or a police officer can file a petition, and a court will hold a hearing, and the judge will determine whether the person in question poses a serious threat of violence to themselves or others. So this is a really helpful tool and intervention technique to stop a fully preventable tragedy from occurring. So that's a bit of a background on extreme risk protection orders, and I'll let Tremaine take it away with safe storage.
All right, so safe storage. Safe storage and access prevention laws require responsible gun owners to make a reasonable effort to keep guns out of the hands of children and other prohibited persons, using gun safes, trigger locks, storing ammunition separately for firearms. This one, as a personal level, is something that is always very important to me as someone who, at the age of 5, got hands of a firearm and should not in any way, shape, or form as a 5-year-old, right, had access to a gun in my hands, right? But simple things such as this, right, is gun owners making the reasonable efforts to keep those guns out of the hands of children by a gun safe, right, by a trigger lock, are really important. But we also have 27 states and Washington, D.C. that have enacted these access preventions or storage laws to help keep children from accessing firearms. And safe storage and access prevention laws help avoid homicides, suicides, and unintentional shootings. And it's really important to have these laws that encourage, right, again, our gun owners to practice the kind of safe and secure and responsible storage that everyone ought to support, and quite frankly, that we deserve. And in fact, a study in 2017 found that 66% of gun owners believe that guns should be kept in a locked place when there are children living in the home. So, right, keeping firearms away from our children and out of the hands of people who want to cause harm just makes sense. That's back.
So this slide and this graph kind of shows how these laws and public health intervention techniques work. So looking at the graph below, you can see that the states with the most robust gun safety laws have the lowest death rates by a firearm. And on the other hand, you can see where the states don't have comprehensive gun safety laws, death by a firearm are much, much higher and are leading in the nation. So I think it's a common misconception from some people that gun laws don't work, and that's the data shows that this is simply not true. Strong gun laws and gun violence prevention and gun safety legislation and laws do work. We can go to the next slide.
Reading your comments, and I love it. Thank you. So how to make change in your community. This is my bread and butter. This is the stuff that I'm passionate about. Right. One of my favorite quotes is often, things don't happen by chance, they happen by change, right? And we also think about our nation as a whole, and as we have progressed with every generation, and as we seek to make things better, right? That has happened through movements. That has happened by people working collectively together to want to keep people safe and to want to make a better world for the next generations. So how do we do that, right? You contact your local elected officials, your state senators, your state representatives, your city council members, and your county council members, right? It's important to contact them, make sure that your voices are heard, and even sometimes when they're out there doing the good work, to encourage them to continue to do that, because that's just as important to have them hear that affirmation so that they know to keep going, to keep our community safe, to keep your community safe. Also volunteering for candidates who make GVP a central issue in their campaign. Also leading or participating in protests in support of victims and survivors of gun violence. This one, right? Start a student club or an organization at your school to educate your classmates on the realities of gun violence, right? I've said in one of our prior meetings, for those who were there for that one, right? This is a great time for you to always get involved, and really there is no age that makes it right to get involved, right? Because at some point you all are inheriting this country. You will be the next round of change makers and change seekers. And so it's great to get in there and to get involved and to educate others and start those organizations, start those clubs, to make others aware of how we can work together to make that change. But also outside of school and your friends, talk to your family members about safe storage of their firearms, right? I shared my story earlier, and I share it often with even family members as well, because it is important for me that they know about safe storage and making sure that that we're keeping our families safe and that we're keeping our kids safe, because it's always something for me. And then lastly, utilizing ERPOs if a friend or family member has a firearm and is at risk of harming themselves or others.
So now we're going to transition into a bit of an interactive activity called Myth or Fact, all about gun violence prevention and gun violence. If you get some of these wrong, that is okay. There's a lot of misinformation about gun violence and gun violence prevention laws. So this will help you with some talking points, whether you get it right or wrong. As you can see, the first one is gun violence is a mental health issue. So gonna put in your answers, give it a minute.
Didn't even know they were coming into a pop quiz tonight. Homework on the evening.
Okay, just a few more seconds here, and then I will reveal the results. Anyone else wants to put in a guess?
Ready to those responses in, guys.
Okay, so it looks like, I'm sharing the results with you all now. It looks like about 33% of you thought this was a myth, and about 67% of you thought it was a fact. I'm gonna go to the next slide here.
All right, I'll reveal. Okay, so it's a myth. I know this one is a bit tricky. So while it is true, sorry, there's a siren right outside my home. It is true that individuals with mental health challenges are far more likely to be the victim of gun violence, but not the perpetrator. So a lot of times people think it's the opposite, where the people with mental health challenges are the perpetrator, but this is not the case. And this myth is very harmful, as it perpetuates dangerous stereotypes associated with mental health, that people who experience mental health challenges are dangerous and violent, when that is simply not the case. Rather, people with mental health challenges are more likely to be the victim of gun violence. All right, let's do the second one.
All right, it's my turn to be a professor, huh? All right, so myth or fact number 2. Gun laws are not effective because criminals do not follow the law. I don't think anybody wants to hear me sing, but I could have done the Jeopardy soundtrack music, but I'll spare your ears, spare all of your ears.
Give it a few more seconds here for folks to get their votes in. All right, I will go ahead and launch the results for you guys. So it looks like we have about 74% of you think this is a myth and 26% believe it is a fact. So let me scroll over to our answer slide here.
Survey says, myth. Strong gun laws have been proven to reduce gun violence, right? I think I even mentioned a little bit earlier, if you look at the different states and their different laws and how those have impacted those communities to keep them safe, but also if you look as a whole compared to other countries and the ways that they have tackle this issue of gun violence prevention, it has shown that it keeps people safer. All right, I think we're at the next one.
All right, so people need to have firearms in the home to protect themselves. Is it a myth or is it a fact? Also, if you've gotten the 2 right so far and you're 2 for 2, let us know in the chat. I wanna see who's got all the facts down.
Bragging rights.
2 for 2 for Kelly. Oh, all right, some 2 for 2s. All
So many
right.
people. You guys are pros.
We love to see it. I'm flawless. I could also sing that song with Beyonce, but I don't think you want that either. So.
All right, I'm gonna give it a few more seconds here for anyone else who wants to get in their answer. All right, let's go ahead and share the results. So it looks like we have 63% of you believe this is a myth and about 38% of you think it's a fact. So let's scroll over to the answer here.
And it's a myth. You might be noticing a common pattern in the answers here. People do not need to have firearms in the home to protect themselves. In fact, there is no evidence suggesting that gun ownership increases safety. Rather, research suggests the opposite, that the presence of a firearm or gun in the home increases the risk of both homicide and suicide. So this is a very common misconception that the way to be safe by guns is to have one of your own, but research shows that that is not the truth. And take it away with the last one.
Okay, I expect really good results for this one, guys.
Okay.
Launching it
Fourth
now.
one. Here we go. Mass shooters target gun-free zones. Hopefully we got some 3 for 3s out there.
All right, give it a couple seconds here. Get it ready to get closed out. All right, let's go ahead and close this one down and share the results here. Looks like we have about 70% of you believe this is a myth and 30% believe it's a fact. So let's get to the answer slide.
And a myth. There is no evidence that mass shooters seek out places where guns are prohibited. And in fact, most shootings occur in private homes or public locations where guns are permitted. So hopefully now you'll see those 4 for 4s. A 4 for 4, good job, great. Right, and even then you don't lose, you've educated yourself. So everybody is a winner.
And Lukman, we appreciate the honesty.
We do. You learned something though, so it's fine. You're still 4 for 4. You learned 4 new things. You're also 4 for 4. All right. Oh, this is me. So be in touch. Keep in touch. This is not the last time, right? We said this last time to continue to stay in touch. You all will inherit this country one day, and it's great that you all are getting so involved, so young, to be informed, to be educated, to keeping your community safe. Up here, you see our names, our emails, and our numbers. Feel free to buzz me at any time. Some of you also linked in me the last time, which I also appreciated, that you are thinking far more ahead of me. I just say, I praised you all multiple times in private that you all are so far more advanced than me, that I was not there yet. And so I commend you all. But there are many different ways to continue to engage with us. We have volunteer opportunities.
Yeah.
that you can be a part of with us. And you can also, right, look into our internships. We do internships as you all continue to grow in this field and to be a part. It's a great way to get exposed to various experiences that we all do every day at our organization. And also experiences, if you all have interest, I know that next week we are having our Seattle mayoral forum, but if you're interested in just checking that out and seeing what we do live in action, that's also another great way to plug into us, to be aware and see what we're up to. But again, our information is there. And please stay in touch. We will certainly stay in touch with you all for different ways that we continue to work together, because it is very much important to keep this going. This isn't a moment, this is a movement, and we've got to make sure that we continue to keep going forward. I live of a day where we can know that all of our communities are safe, but it always is nice to have meetings like this with you all to know that the future is still in good hands.
Thanks, Sam and Tremaine. That was such a great presentation. We really appreciate it. And so I wanted to just, let me stop sharing our screen here so I can see all your faces again. I wanted to spend a little time and open it up to you all and just see what questions you have of us. Or maybe we just did such a great job that there are no questions, but if you have questions, we would love to answer them.
I was thinking questions or anything anybody can add to the material or any of your knowledge on the topic.
Feel free to either put in the chat or unmute yourself and speak up.
I think there was one question earlier, I think from Clifford. It says the work of the Alliance is super important. The Alliance win on I-594 was super important. What reforms can we push on a local level?
So that's so funny. I haven't heard somebody bring up Initiative 594 in a while. Honestly, we're so focused on 1639 right now and all the work around that one that passed, I want to say about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I will say, as far as like what we're looking at locally right now, we haven't quite put out our new sort of policy plan yet. We are deep in the weeds into the electoral cycle right now, and sort of at the end of the electoral cycle is when we start thinking about legislative and policy work. And at that time, towards the end of the year, is when that sort of information will be coming out. Just because at this time, you know, everyone, even I would say elected officials, are really focused more on sort of the election cycle right now that's going on. But I imagine, you know, we will have, I know like there were quite a few just in King County, and I don't know if this is the same for Kent, but for King County, I know we had quite a few police accountability bills that were on the docket last legislative session, and I know a lot of them went through, but I imagine there'll be more sort of policy work around that area as well. That's what I can anticipate. I don't know if that's true though.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say that it is contingent on the election, but right now there's a lot of conversations around that at the local level. But it's contingent on basically who wins the election locally. So
Exactly.
yeah, we're in an off year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any more questions?
All right. Yeah, I had one, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So like a week ago in my civics class, we were having a class discussion about gun violence. And one thing that came up was I think it was the law of, let me look at it real quick. The Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, if I remember correctly. So do you guys have like, have you guys done anything to work around that law? Because if I remember correctly, Biden's administration was trying to get rid of that act, if I remember correctly. So does your guys' alliance kind of try to advocate to take that down, or? Yeah.
I am really glad to see one of our board members, Ben, on the call here, who is much more knowledgeable in this area than I think probably the three of us are. So if he's able to answer this, I'm going to pass it over to Ben for a minute for that.
Well, gee whiz, thank you, Chelsea. So the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act was federal level legislation that passed, I think it was probably 15, 20 years ago, that shielded manufacturers of firearms from any liability for damage that came from use of their products. So if they make guns and let's say people go out and use them in a foreseeable way, you know, if it's any other product, let's say somebody was making like explosives or something, or they made cars or something that went out and caused damage, you can sue the manufacturer because like there was something wrong. They should have taken additional protections, but this statute happened 15 or 20 years ago again, and it protects gun manufacturers from ever being sued. So you can't sue them, which means they can make all the money in the world and lobby as hard as they want for lots and lots of gun sales. And when things go badly, you can't, you know, go after them. I think when it comes to the Alliance, there are some things we can do locally to try to pick around the edges of that. We call a liability shield. It's hard though when it's a national level law. Like you really, I would love to see the Biden administration motivate Congress right now to change that law. We'll see if it happens. I think we've got another year and a half until midterm elections, so maybe they'll do it. But at the local level for the Alliance, there are some minor things we can do to chip around the edges.
All right, thank you. That cleared it up a little bit for me. It was just something I was curious about, but thank you.
Well, and you know, to that point, I won't take too long, but one of the things that we're talking about now is perhaps even in Washington state, we can unlawful to sell certain kinds of guns, right? Then if people do that, like let's say they were selling, like you can't sell certain kinds of like machine guns anymore. If people do that and then there's damage that comes from that, that's not lawful commerce anymore. You see what I'm saying? Like there's a law that prohibits people from doing that. So now you can sue them. So that's one little thing you can do at the sort of state level.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that would be a good thing. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Ben. You didn't know you were going to be put on the spot tonight, so appreciate it.
Okay, we have Hamdi that put something in the chat. I'm gonna read it for her. What is a edge experience that would genuinely push a person to own a gun and obtain it for safety? Because I notice a lot of people owning it more because of all these mass shootings and targeting random people, which is awful, but it happens, unfortunately.
I think it's a tough question to answer because, you know, everybody's view on what is safety is going to be different. You know, what I consider safe is going to be completely different from what Sam considers safe, right? Then there's a lot of factors that play into it. One of it is obviously just your community setting, you know, what kind of community am I in? Another one is just as simple as the color of our skin, you know, like Sam is probably going to feel a lot safer as a white woman in our communities walking around without a gun, and she probably doesn't think that she needs a gun for safety. Whereas maybe me as a person of color who's part of the queer community might feel a little less safe going out in the world and might feel like in order for me to be safe, I need to have a firearm. So that's a really difficult question to answer because I believe that it's such a personal question per person. And I don't think that, you know, there's any one right answer to that, right? So, Tremaine, you want to add anything to that?
Only, you know, I was having this conversation with somebody else the other day, and we were talking about, right, safety and literally, quite frankly, that question, right, of somebody owning a gun to the realms of, that would make them safer, right? But I think for me, the question even there was, what are the factors, right? To me, that is the factors around them as a society has made them feel that way. So, right, in order to have people not feel like they need a gun to make them safer, right, it's really, let's address the factors that are affecting them to make them feel that way, right? In terms of health, safety, security, accountability when it comes to our institutions by way of it's right, if that's police accountability, if that's our judicial system. I think that for me, right, even as a Black man, right, that right, I could say I want a gun to, right, protect me from X, Y, and Z, right, but it's really those factors that need to change and improve so that I would truly feel safe, right? And so that's kind of where I have been living in my head with it, that it's really those factors that have made people feel that way. So we need to work together, right, as a community to address all of those different factors and the barriers that are making people feel that way.
I think we have two people that raised their hand. I think Ismail raised his hand first. So Ismail, you can go. Faria, you can go after Ismail.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that. I wanted your guys' take on what do you have to say about people that are saying like the red flag law is unconstitutional, they don't support it and they don't want it passed? How would you try to win them over? How would you try to educate them?
To like, if you were in a state that didn't have like ERPOs in place, is that what you're getting at?
Could you say that again?
I want to make sure I understand the question. So you're saying like if there were people who didn't agree with the ERPOs as a law, did I catch that correctly?
I think it was along the line. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I said, what do you have to say to people that don't agree with the red flag law or call it unconstitutional?
I mean, I think, this presentation we gave, there's a couple bullet points that, Sam went over it would sort of be my rebuttal of like, look, these have worked historically speaking. If you look at the data, that it has helped reduce, accidental shootings. It has helped reduce, suicides, and because of them being enacted. I mean, on a personal level, like I don't know. I mean, I would probably be a little upset if somebody was like, hey, I totally think that's wrong. And, that's doesn't help anybody. But at the same time, it's, I have to be a little bit careful of just thinking, that is their opinion. And I can only hope that through education that I can maybe try to turn the way that they feel about it. That's, I think, the way that I would approach it.
Thanks for answering my question.
Okay, Faria, I think you can go if you have a question. Or if your hand was raised accidentally. Okay. Well, in the meantime, we have Nemo, one of our students, ask a question. If someone comes to you guys for help, what would you do about it?
I guess my first question to that, I guess the help is what type of help? I guess what is the situation that they are in, that they require help? And then of course, even outside of our presentation is kind of sharing the resources that are there for them, depending, right, again, on the level of help that they are needing, to just give them access to resources and information, and make sure, right, that I'm putting them in that place that they need for their own well-being.
Kind of just to add on to that, I know as a person, who's not an adult, it can be stressful, and you might not know what to do when a friend confides in you about something as scary as that. I personally had experience with that, whether it's in relation to gun violence or mental health or anything. Just tell an adult you trust. That's the best thing that you can do. And that person you'll help get resources. And just use a trusted adult and a resources you have around you.
We had Umul said, do you guys have a hotline? Like, how do people reach you?
No, we don't have a hotline. That's not really the work that we focus on, is like sort of those hotline calls. We're more focused on like working to with other community members to help change policy and enact laws within across Washington State. But I mean, I'm sure we could probably pull together. We have a whole resource page actually. I can see if I can find it quickly, but I will try and find the link and drop it in the chat for you guys. We do have a resource page that has quite a few sort of mental health options. I think it ranges from counseling to book resources to, I think there might even be some hotlines on there that you could call into, so.
Yeah. And I want to point out, Clifford pointed out, just an FYI, there's also a crisis line that helps folks connect with emergency services, 211, and he posted a link in the chat along with that. Thank you, Clifford. Mohammed asked, will the prevention of gun sales reduce gun violence?
I think it's certainly one of the ways that it would help, right? In terms of the access so that people don't create harm for themselves or others. Not sure if anyone wants to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, just with anything in our society, right? I think that even if people want to have guns, they're going to find a way to get them. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. And the only thing that we can do as a society to continue to try to reduce gun violence is to continue to educate the community on how to keep themselves safe. And that's by, you know, educating people around safe storage laws, you know, for those folks who really feel that they need a gun to stay safe, and educating, you know, maybe our friends who are, you know, maybe a little depressed or have suicide ideation and are living at home with a gun, and, you know, educating them on ways that they can protect themselves with living with that within their home. But do I think that, you know, it's going to prevent gun violence by the reduction of gun sales? I don't know if I can like 100% say that, yes, that's going to happen. I think that if people want to cause harm, they're going to find a way to do so. And there's always, I just don't, as much as I want to have a society without guns, I don't think that that's going to be a reality, right? So for me, it's more of like, can we continue to educate our community members to help keep them safe?
Maritza put something in the chat. Maritza, do you want me to read it, or do you want to?
Oh, I can. So the first fact or myth, it was established that gun violence is not a mental health issue. And I said it was, but only because I was thinking of it in terms of like the suicide rates and like the fact that a lot of the suicides are caused by, you know, firearms. So how would you explain that to somebody? Because how do you separate the people who do it to cause harm to others and like people who just do it to harm themselves, if that makes a little bit of sense? Or how would you, I know it was like gun violence is a public health issue, but would you also say it's like a just criminal justice issue, or is it mostly just a public health issue? How would you guys describe that?
Sam, I'm going to jump on this because I feel like you started on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, to answer the last point of I think this is a great question. And I think part of that's, you know, unique about gun violence is that it's extremely intersectional. It affects so many different aspects of life in so many areas. And I think you know, something to think about, especially, you know, you mentioned suicide, of like, suicide is a mental health issue, and unfortunately firearms can be used as a tool to carry that out. And but I wouldn't say that, I think there can be correlation between the two, but I wouldn't say that all, like, I think the danger comes in when we say, oh, people with mental health issues are the ones that are carrying out gun violence, because that's not the case. While there could be overlap, and of course sometimes, you know, people with mental health, just like anyone can commit gun violence, people with mental health issues can commit gun violence. But I think the danger is we know the research shows that that is not the case, that most people with mental health issues do not carry out gun violence. And I think that's kind of where the danger comes in, is when we fully associate gun violence and mental health together, when research shows that that's just not true. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that answered my question.
Of course. Chelsea or Tremaine, feel free to add on to that.
I think that was beautiful.
Omar said he had a question. He just said Farhia before, that's why I keep on calling Farhia, but that's the husband. Omar, if you want to ask the question, you can.
Okay.
Hold on, he texted me.
You
Let
texted
me
it
see
to
if I can get it. So he said, ask them, why is the city with gun control have the most problems?
I missed the first half of that. You were breaking
Yeah.
up.
Oh, sorry. Okay, why is the cities with the gun control have the most problems?
Why do the cities with the most gun control have the most problems?
Like Chicago.
Like Chicago. I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know what that correlation is.
I think this is a hard question to answer, but I think what sometimes you have to look at, one factor that may play a part in this is populations. Chicago is one of the biggest cities in the world, right? That means this population density is very large there, meaning that, of course, there are more people, the more crime happens. So I don't think necessarily that there's a correlation between the fact that gun reform or gun safety laws don't work because the rates are the highest there, but rather places where we do have a lot of gun safety laws have big cities, and big cities have more people, and that means it can look like there's more crime rates that are occurring. So I think the answer is very complicated, but I think that's one factor to consider, is where are you looking? Are these big cities? Of course, there's going to be more crime in Chicago than there's going to be in a rural place in Nebraska. Is one thing I would consider.
Okay, Ismail, private message for you. Ismail, you have a question, you can go ahead. And
Yeah, my question is, do you think it's possible to live in a society where there are guns, but there's no what was the word I was looking for? There would be no gun violence. Because we already know it's possible, like Switzerland. Switzerland, not just a state, but it's a whole country where they have more guns than people, but no mass shootings. Do you think we could apply that to America, or do you think we could apply that to our city? Or do you guys think it's possible? Just throwing it out there.
I mean, I think also, you know, to Sam's point, you know, Switzerland is probably a lot smaller than the United States, right? Just in population. And I think, you know, just given the dichotomy of how our society is, politically speaking, I think it's going to be really hard to get our country in a place where we can, you know, reduce the amount of gun violence that we have in our backyards, right? Like it's going to be a lot harder to get everyone sort of on that same page of thinking the same way about guns and the impact that they have on our communities. And, you know, that's why we have all of these organizations working to, you know, reduce gun violence, right? That's why we have it. Because if we didn't have this problem, we wouldn't have all of these organizations. And I would love to one day say, I mean, although it's my job, like I would love one day to say, we don't need the Alliance for Gun Responsibility anymore because our communities are safe from gun violence. But I don't necessarily see that happening in America, quite honestly. I don't know.
And to that, I just say that, but we also should never lose that hope and use that drive to still work for communities and a country that is safe, right? A little alone, we can do so little, together we can do so much. And so to continue to work together to a community and to a world, to a country that we envision, that is what we want to see.
Okay, I think Shukri had a question. Shukri, did you want to ask it out loud or did you want me to read it for you?
Can you read it for me?
Yeah, sure. Would you say people of color are more at risk with gun violence or no? I'm not sure how to word it.
I mean, the short and long answer to that is yes, they definitely are. You know, and I think it's a lot of different factors that play into that. A lot of it, I mean, if we just look at people of color in general and their place in our society, they tend to live in poorer communities. They tend to not have as much access to education and healthcare. And that puts them more at risk. They tend to live in areas that probably get overlooked when it comes to things like safety measures and community safety, and it takes longer for cops and ambulances to get to them, you know, and it does. And the education aspect of it, I think, is also lacking in some of the communities of color. And access to guns seems to be easier sometimes in some of these communities. I don't know. I feel like that was a very like kind of simple answer, but I don't know if anyone wanted to add something deeper to that.
If I could, I mean, I think Chelsea's right. I mean, there's no denying that people of color are at higher risk of gun violence. The problem comes with certain people who assume that that's because of some innate characteristic of people of color, and it's not. It's something that happens because of all these other things that are happening to people of color and an unbridled gun culture. Yeah, it's tough, but yeah, there's no denying that people of color are at greater risk. And for too long, I think I know when it comes to the Alliance, for a long time, one of the things that we were trying to do, like a lot of gun violence prevention organizations, is trying to pass tougher gun laws to make it harder to get a gun or to make punishments more significant. The problem is sometimes those have unintended consequences, right? And the people who often have to bear those consequences are people of color. And so we didn't want to see more people locked up or more people put in danger. So like, as far as the Alliance goes, I know there's an increased focus on working within communities to try to focus on intervening with people who are at risk, to try to stop gun violence, trying to prevent it, rather than like locking up the people who do it.
Thank you for answering the question.
I was just going to add one more thing. I mean, it's become, you know, I think 2020 was a learning opportunity for many people to recognize, you know, police violence is gun violence, and that, you know, we see disproportionately that people of color are affected by police brutality. And I think that, you know, we've had examples of this in the past year showing that if we, as we should look at police violence as gun violence, we are seeing this disproportionate interactions of people of color with police than with white people in police. So I think that also plays a big part of it too.
I had a question for Commander Hollis.
Go ahead.
What initiatives or what steps are you guys is Kent PD taking to lessen gun violence in the communities in Kent?
That's a big question. Right now, what we're trying to do is we have an officer that's assigned to a task force that concentrates mostly on violent crimes or specifically gun crimes. And so he will go out, and when we have incidents where firearms are used and everything like that, they try and find a way to backtrack to where the guns came from and see if they can make arrests along the way. And it really depends on the type of case, because sometimes the guns are stolen because the firearm has been left out by somebody or has been taken in a burglary. And so there's not really a way to charge the owner of that firearm per se, because they left it out in their home, it was burglarized. But maybe down the road, that might be something that would be of consideration for people, right? If you leave a firearm that's just out and about for somebody to break into your house and take, maybe there should be a law that discusses that, or there's a way to kind of prevent those things. In terms of some of these other things that are going on, so maybe it's a firearm that's not registered, such as a ghost gun that you know, is out there. This officer will try and go and again, just backtrack, see if they can figure out who's making the guns, where the guns are coming from, and if they can make an arrest via federal laws, and they'll do it that way. And if there's a way that we can make an arrest locally, then we try and go that route. The unfortunate thing is we only have one officer doing that. So as you can imagine, there's a few gun crimes that are floating around out there, but the officer tries, and the task force, they try and do the best that they can with getting illegal guns. And if they find out that it's a deal where someone had just left a firearm out, provide education to that person to say, hey, it's really best to make sure that your firearms are locked up, so they don't end up in the wrong hands. Hopefully that answers your question there, Ismail.
Yeah, and I had another question. My other question was, what steps is Kent PD taking to curb racial bias or curb police brutality? That was my question.
Sure. So right now, we started off this year by having all of our officers go through an implicit bias training. And so that was led by me. Basically, we provided a video that Dr. Bryant Marks had used. We wanted everybody to go to his class, but due to COVID, we weren't able to do that. So we used a video that he created. And afterwards, I led a discussion about what bias means and how it manifests itself in the workplace. And what we don't want officers to do is to, you know, act on negative biases, or to be aware of those potentially negative biases that they might have. And, you know, our goal is not to, you know, disproportionately contact or assault or hurt or utilize unnecessary force on people of color. Now, we're trying to do a better job of that in terms of our tracking. And one of the other projects that the chief is working on is we're trying to get a data collection project going so that we can better understand where and when our use of force is being used. And, you know, we know disproportionately that force is used on people of color more often than not. And so part of our training also includes de-escalation training. We're going to implement later on this year some additional de-escalation training. And then we have some race and equity trainings that will be coming along down the pipe as well.
Thank you so much for answering my question.
Absolutely. I think Clifford, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought Yusuf had called me, but so my question's simple because all that sounds fantastic. So last year there was, I'm sure you heard about the incident where there was a young Black man that was tackled by 2 Kent PD officers and put to the ground, and one officer put his knee on the back of the gentleman's back to the point where he couldn't breathe. And I'm sure you've seen the videos, right? So were those officers disciplined or put on suspension or even terminated for their conduct? Not just for that incident, but also another incident in which a young Black woman was hogtied and tased who was in distress.
I don't know about the hog tying incident, but the other incident, oh, what happened with those 2? They weren't terminated, I'll tell you that. I think this is the incident that the chief may have addressed in a city council meeting, and unfortunately, I don't.
Yeah.
I know that if I remember right, they may have been talked to, but I don't have all the specifics on that one.
I do know that the KPD, the Kent Police Association, the police union, sent a letter to city council, basically just suffice to say, glossing over their actions, and it was a pretty ugly letter. But yeah,
unions
just
doing what unions do.
Not all unions. I love my union, but I digress. And plus, I'm a teacher, so my union defends me on many different things because education's important. But I digress. Yeah. So yeah, that I just know there was that. But yeah, that's really good to hear. Thank you. Or not great to hear you, but thank you for answering.
Yeah, and we're still trying to work on things. So obviously, anytime we have can get community input, we're trying to become better. We're trying to figure out how we can make our policies better. I think since that incident, we have reviewed a lot of our policies and they've been changed. I think they're supposed to be posted publicly. I don't know if that's happened yet, but that's supposed to be something that's coming down the road.
The officers are still on the force, yes?
That's correct, yes.
That's not good. Okay, but thank you anyway.
I think Awale had a question in the chat put in. Did you want to ask it out loud or?
No, the question was answered by Chelsea. Thank you, Chelsea.
No.
But it's amazing because I just saw a couple of days ago someone open carry at one of the city parks.
Well, maybe Ben can help clarify this a little bit. I mean, we're still considered an open carry state. So that doesn't necessarily mitigate the open carry law that we have here. This is around public demonstrations and I believe on the Capitol, is that right, Ben?
Right, and it's always around the Capitol, during public demonstrations, and around courthouses, I believe.
Yeah.
But yes, it is generally an open carry state with those exceptions. But as you can see, that the more recent law that passed that prohibits people from carrying at a Capitol or at a demonstration is an example of the fact that you can find reasonable exceptions to the open carry law, right? Like you can say, well, yeah, it's open carry except for this place, or let's say maybe somebody says we're going to pass one that says you can't do it within 500 feet of a school. Is that something they could pass? Maybe. Yeah, there are ways to pass laws that create exceptions to sort of general rules.
Is there a law that we can introduce that will make state of Washington not open carry?
You know, I don't know how, whether it's based in our state constitution or whether it's based on a statute. That's gonna affect the answer. So if it was based on a statute that's like something that's passed by our legislature, then they can always go back in and change that law. If it's in the Constitution, it takes a lot more work. And I don't know the answer to where the open carry right is located for our state.
Thank you.
I think there's also a question.
Yeah,
How
Hamdi,
the
question? Do you want to ask it? Hamdi? Okay.
Yeah, so what I was trying to say is for like, do you think it would be important for like, you know, gun owners, well, not the gun owners, but you know, the people who sell guns in shops to require for people to take background checks before they can obtain or own a firearm or any weapon?
And you mean like more extensive, like
Yeah, you know, like if they had previous, you know, if they like
previous
mental
history?
health, just like previous history on them.
So
We do have background checks. Is that what you're talking about?
Background
You're
checks.
talking about, are you talking about the shop owners having background checks or just the buyer themselves having a background check?
The buyers.
I believe that one was passed under, is that under the 1639 bill, right? Is that was the requirement for background checks?
I'm double checking, but I think that might have been in there.
Yeah, I think that's the 1639, which I'm sorry, I'm not really good on the numbers. They're all just like swimming in my head. I'm pretty sure 1639 is the one that requires background checks before you purchase a firearm.
Thank you.
I had a question. My question is, we can't, or it's legal to open carry in Washington without a license, but why is it illegal to conceal carry without a license? Because you need a license to conceal carry, but you don't need a license to open carry. And that just doesn't make sense to me. I was gonna ask, what do you guys think of that?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Question.
What was I gonna say? So you need a license to conceal carry, but you don't need a license to open carry. Why? That just doesn't make sense. Why? Because you don't have to have proof to open carry, but you do to conceal carry. I was gonna ask because that just doesn't really seem safe. I feel like we're taking steps backwards. So I was just gonna ask what you guys thought about.
I saw Ben unmute himself. I know he was jumping in.
Oh, did I? Sorry, I keep jumping in. I apologize. No, you're right. It does seem odd. I mean, I think if you were to ask the people who passed that law, they would say the difference is if somebody is carrying a concealed weapon, you don't really know. You can't see them coming in that way, and you can't sort of adjust how you interact or how close you get. So I think like the idea with a concealed weapon is that it is more dangerous. I think that's the assumption, that a concealed weapon can be a surprise and can place people at increased risk. Whereas if you're open carrying, everyone can see it coming. I should say though, like none of this changes the fact that it's still illegal to point a gun at somebody. It's still illegal to fire a gun at somebody. And it's still illegal to use a gun in a way that causes alarm, that causes people to be scared. So even without the recent changes to the law about like open carry at demonstrations and whatnot, I mean, it's still, it is still illegal for people to use a gun to scare people. That law has been on the books for a very long time.
I have a question. Isn't the whole point of open carry to intimidate people?
A lot
So
of people
wouldn't that
would
make
say
it
yes.
open carry illegal?
Yeah. I mean, I think in this space, a lot of us would say, you know, to open carry, you are intimidating another person just by having the gun out visually so other people can see it. I would probably say that when they were initially putting this law together, they probably didn't quite think through the fact that it could be intimidating to see a gun out in the open. That's the way that I could answer that. I don't think that, I mean, and I think that's how it is with a lot of laws, you know, is that it's not necessarily the intent to harm people, it's unintentional harm that's happening. And then it's like years later, you realize, oh my gosh, this is actually harming people. We need to change this law. And it goes through the whole process of getting a new law enacted or whatever it may be to get it changed so that it is safer. But I don't think that I think people who have open carry and who do openly carry, I don't think that they're, I think their mind frame is that I'm carrying this for protection. I don't think that they necessarily think that it's intimidating other people. But for someone like, you know, myself or maybe other people of color, they might be intimidated by that because of, you know, past experiences or traumas or whatever it may have been that caused them to now be frightened of that gun.
Yeah, and another question I had is the minimum age requirement to open carry is 21, but your brain typically doesn't stop developing until 25. So you don't really have the mental capacity. So why would they make it legal? Sometimes I just think like people that have power just lack common knowledge. I don't know if it's just me, but
like Ishmael, I am team what you're saying. I get it. You know, I think the age used to be, was it 18 or it might have even been younger than that, and we got it raised to 21 in Washington State. But you know, you also think about, you know, there's all these differences in the world. When you look at, you know, the drinking age limit here in the United States, people in the UK are like, well, why is your guys' drinking age limit 21? Like, we're drinking when we're babies. And it's like they have a whole different mind frame around, you know, drinking and what that it does to them and like how they go out in the world and they utilize it, right? And it's not, they don't have the same issues that we have here in America around drinking because of that continued education that is like generationally passed down through each family member, right? It's like the entire country has come together to educate one another on this topic. Do I think that a 21-year-old should have access to purchasing a gun? No, I mean, I don't. I personally believe that it should be reserved for, you know, things like police and military, but that's personal opinion. But then you also can think about, you can break this down even more. You know, you look at people who are in service, you know, in our military, like they can join the military at, is it 18 or is it 16? I know it's fairly young.
I think it's
teenager,
18.
right?
Yeah.
I think it's 18. So, you know, you also think about 18-year-olds who are signing up for the military who are going to have access to these firearms at a very young age, right? So I don't know what the correct answer to that is. Do I think that limiting access to people under 21 is the right thing to do? Yes, I do. Do I wish that it was maybe even a little higher age? Probably, but at least we're at 21, right? So that is a little bit more helpful.
Moment, not a movement, not a moment. Keep pushing.
Yep.
I think Mohammed had a question. How does exposure to gun violence psychologically affect the youth, and what resources are available for youth that have been exposed to this?
That's a great question. You know, on the broader scope, I think psychologically speaking, you know, I think I don't want to assume that you guys all know this, but I think that the younger generation is more in tune with the effects of trauma that it has on you, right? And I think when you look at the trauma that is caused by gun violence, I think you know that you know, there's all different things that kind of are involved in that. There's depression, there is maybe suicidal ideation, there is maybe fear, there's maybe all different things that play into that factor of the psychological impact that can have on a youth. And when you think about childhood trauma, you also can think about how that can, if it's not dealt with, it can lead into your adult life and have effects on your adult life. And do I know about resources about how it can help? I know that there are all kinds of healing circles that popped up in 2020. And those healing circles range in all different areas of healing circles for specifically Black and Brown community members to come talk about the trauma that they've experienced in gun violence. I know that there are healing circles for specifically just women who have been affected by domestic violence and guns, you know, and I know that there are healing circles out there that have happened in the Zoom land. There's also, you know, some of the resources that we've shared about hotlines and things like that. And the best thing that I could say, like, if you're looking for, you know, maybe a resource right now in Kent, and if you can't find one, I mean, I just want to encourage you to create your own healing circle and just, you know, that there are other people in your community who are maybe suffering from the trauma around gun violence and the impact that it's had on them, and invite them to have a space to gather with you so you guys are being able to share your experiences and you're not having to deal with it by yourself.
All right.
I
So
did that. I wanted to add as well. I realized I was muted. I did that thing in 2020. Right outside of, right, you know, the psychological effects that will happen, right, but also the access to care that they can have, right, to kind of work through those traumas that they've had. But I think, right, also sometimes the inequity of healthcare, that not everybody might have access to that, right, in a traditional setting, which also brings the importance, right, of trauma-informed care. Here in Virginia, right, we have a summer camp. I'm on a board of directors, and we've started just talking about trauma-informed care, of having everybody as a staff, right, have that ability and some knowledge of trauma-informed care. So then that way, right, outside of, if that child that's been exposed couldn't get it in maybe a traditional setting of a, you know, reaching out with a therapist and speaking through it, right, maybe having our teachers and our after-school programs and having some resources anywhere and everywhere that is trauma-informed care. Having that knowledge would also be helpful, right, to be able to hopefully see if something is happening and help in that moment.
okay, awesome. Well, it's 6:32. Oh. Someone.
One last question Nemo had, but if you have time, if time permits, so yeah.
Yeah, we can do one last question. Nemo's question: how do we decide who can and cannot have a gun, and how would that person know they are not allowed a gun?
I think this goes back to, you know, if they want the gun, they're going to get it. There's a lot of do we call them black market guns? I guess that's what we call them. We call them like black market guns out there that they're going to get the access to it. The only way that we would know that they can't, that they aren't allowed a gun is like if they failed their background check, you know, at least here in Washington State. If they failed their background check, then we would know that they're not allowed to have a gun. Otherwise, you know, like I had mentioned earlier, there's nothing stopping a person who really wants to get a gun. I mean, you can even 3D print them now. That is how easy it is to get access to a gun. So I don't know. I don't know how else to kind of add to that. If there's anything else anyone wants to add to that.
I guess one thing to kind of add on to that is, I mean, Washington, our 594, I believe, in initiative 594 in 2014, closed the loophole, but it still exists in a lot of other places where if you get a weapon or a firearm through a gun show, then a lot of times there's no background check. So while we can try to rely on background checks to hopefully flag anyone that tries to get a weapon that's not, or a gun that's not supposed to, sometimes in other locations, not here, it won't flag them due to that loophole.
All right. Well, it's 6:34, which means it's 9 something over where you are, Tremaine. I want to say this was an amazing event. I want to say thank you to the students for asking such great questions. And I want to say thank you to the Alliance for taking the time to respond and considering their voices. You know, I think this is how we move forward together and stay on the same page. I think with all our questions and answers, we all have similar intentions with regards to how we feel towards gun violence, and we want to see it, and we want to see it reduced in communities because we want to see healthy individuals, healthy family members, and ultimately healthy cities and communities. And I think we're on the right track with events like this. So I want to say thank you guys again. I want to take a group picture screenshot. So if everyone could have their camera on, I want to see all those beautiful faces. Okay. Give me a moment. I mean, do you two kids, you can. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No, that wasn't the count over the picture. I was just giving the count up of the kids. Turn on the camera. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I apologize. Well, at least I got everyone smiling now.
That is just wrong. Here we are trying to pose for the picture.
I got you smiling, didn't I? Okay. All right. All right. All right. All right. I'm gonna take a couple pictures. All right. Ready? 3, 2, 1. All right. Again. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. 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 Such a great event. Such a great night with everyone here. I'm so glad you guys were all able to make it. This was amazing, and I hope to do something like this similar in the future. The Alliance, once again, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. I want to say thank you to all the individuals that showed up in support of the youth and came to listen alongside us as we learn together as a community. This is how we make transformative change happen. It's one of the first steps, but it's a good step. So thank you guys so much and have a great night. Jermaine, I know it's like close to 10 for you, so I don't know if you're going to sleep after this, but.
An old man, I'll probably walk my dog and then do that.
That's probably good. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, Yusuf.
Hi, Julia.
How does it feel to breathe under a hijab?
Funny. Well, we've all had masks, so you know how you feel. But I was proud of you. You had your camera on, so that's the only thing. Good job.
Yeah, more than eyebrows, Julia.
And we see Steven, he's new. I think that's Claudia's kid, yeah, Ankita?
No. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Steven is Claudia's kid, yeah?
Yeah.
Hey, Lukman, yeah.
The parents like here for like to
You guys did great. Great
Hold
job.
on. Yeah, Lukman, what'd you say?
what was the parents here for like with this possibility?
What was what?
The parents.
They were just here to listen along.
Oh, see, I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
You guys all asked great questions. All of you guys. Great questions, great questions. You guys should be proud of yourself. You guys did it again. If I was a gambling man, I'd bet on you guys. But that's haram. Okay. All right, you guys. Another W to us. We just keep stacking the W's up in a pandemic. In a pandemic. Come on now. Nothing but W's. What's an L? That's not in my alphabet. All right. All right, you guys, it's like 6:30. Tomorrow is the last day of school for some of you guys. School is like up for some of you guys, which also means the end of like the after school.
There's still more school.
What?
There's still more school.
Well, you're the one that's going to the school, not me.
Surprised because usually most schools end here and the most schools too.
Yeah, you're done with school. I know that. Yeah, Hamdi. So I was gonna say with the end of the school, it means the end of the after school programming. But you know, that doesn't necessarily have to mean that we stop seeing each other. You know, maybe it won't be as frequently, but we can still do things like, you know, weekly or like monthly check-ins, hangouts over the
Summer
summer.
program.
Yeah, we're not gonna abandon you, you guys are our babies. No, I'm playing. But yeah, no, we loved having you guys. You guys are amazing. This year has been amazing to have all of you guys. And I can't wait to have you guys again very soon. See you guys again. Once again, I can't say how proud I am of you guys.
And they can work with Xavier in the market if they want to. For
Yeah.
the older kids.
Yep. Yeah. And we're always going to be in touch with you guys in the group chat. Always. And check-ins with you guys through the phone, all that. We're not going to ghost you guys. We're not going to leave you on red or anything like that. And you guys can't leave us on red either. All right. All right, y'all. All right. You guys probably want to go do something now. Eat. Do something else.
I'm about to knock out.
What, Julia?
I'm about to knock out.
You gonna go to sleep? You deserve it. All right,
Thank
y'all.
you.
You guys. Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye, Yusuf. Thank you for a good job, man. Thank you, team.
Yeah.
Zainab, Ankita.
Thank you,
Thank you,
team.
guys. Ankita said you forgot to introduce us. Maybe next time, inshallah.
No, I was.
I'll know us by now.
It was going. It was like there was an
I
awkward.
was happy you forgot, but okay.
I didn't forget. There was an awkward silence, so I said.
Yusuf.
Oh. Bye, guys.
Yusuf.
Yeah.
I think I dip. Yeah, I think I got because everybody got a note. So.
Yeah. Everyone
Bye.
does. Bye, Julia.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, Zainab.
Bye.